morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, you thirsty bunch of beer drinkers, whenever and wherever you're tuning in from. Big thanks for pressing play on this episode of Between Two Fermenters, a podcast brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery. And yes, today is a great day for a few fresh GLB beers. But really, when isn't it? All right, we got a great show lined up for you guys today. We're going to get a little serious here right off the bat with a little monologue introducing our next guest. In the early morning of March 17th, a day that Torontonians would be out at bars and restaurants across the city celebrating St. Patrick's Day. And I hope you did with Great Lakes Stout. It's a great stout, and it's made here in Etobicoke, nice and local. Doesn't come from a country far, far away. But on that early morning of March 17th, a devastating fire broke out on the Toronto Islands. More specifically, the Wards Island Association Clubhouse, a historical building that was built around 1937, 1938. And that building told the story of the island community all over its walls. The building, for those of you who don't know, it also housed the Island Cafe. It's an ultra-local community establishment where Islanders, Toronto Day Wanderers, that's a hard word to pronounce, wanderers, and tourists alike could bend elbows together on the spacious and sprawling outdoor patio and the bar seating, which is the best, just outdoor bar seating all the way around. Watching the Toronto Ferry come and go, dropping off a new batch of customers with each docking. The Island Cafe was completely lost in the fire. It was destroyed along with the clubhouse. People were and still are devastated by the news. The Island Cafe wasn't just a place to grab a beer or a coffee. It was a community institution where locals caught up on the news of the day, shared stories about their gardens, and regaled visitors with stories about the island's fascinating past. There's a whole lot to unpack if you really take a deep dive into Toronto Islands, the whole history. And they used to have 8,000 people living there, and then in the 50s the city of Toronto came in and moved, evicted people, bulldozed the homes, and now there's only 2 islands that currently have residents, and somewhere around the 700 mark for population on the islands. But it's a fascinating past. It was a place, though, where Toronto mainlanders at the Island Cafe, Toronto mainlanders and tourists alike marked as their destination when getting off the ferry, or to grab a pint before departing back to the city, which was always my favorite thing to do. A place that created memories for families young and old, a must-stop place. Great Lakes Brewery has been a longtime friend and partner of the Island Cafe, and like so many others, our team paused to soak in the news on March 18th. We sell a lot of beer to the cafe, from the minute the taps open in the spring to when they turn off in the fall. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot of beer was consumed at that location. But the discussions around the brewery the next day didn't revolve around that. They and the team revolved around the memories created at the cafe and on the island during our staff team building days. Our production team would go over, play Frisbee, and then end their day at the Island Cafe. It's something that the staff always looked forward to and had a lot of fun doing. We'd be there for live music events. We'd do events with the Island Cafe on the island, just, because it was a great partner of ours. And we'd go over as a team to just put back some fresh Sunnyside pints, which was always a highlight of our summer, or to get some Island Cafe lager, which people on the island love. Island Cafe was and is more than just an account to us. It's family. And so the whole team at Great Lakes is still reeling from the news. From the minute the news did break, the cafe was flooded with love and support. And that support in all forms has energized the team to rise from the ashes. While the clubhouse and Island Cafe are in ashes, the spirit of each is intact, said Zora Freeman McIntyre in an interview with the CBC. As we mourn, we dream of a future sight of summer fun. We dream of a season opening dance and at the new clubhouse, and the first cup of coffee at the new Island Cafe. So, to tell us about these dreams and everything they represent, I'll be joined by Zora, owner of the Island Cafe. Zora is going to be joining us via Zoom for this episode, as he's actually over on the island tending to some business. But first, I am going to crack a Sunnyside Session IPA while you enjoy a word from our sponsors.
Toronto's Festival of Beer returns to Bandshell Park at Exhibition Place between July 26th and 28th. Come to TFOB and enjoy the best of beer and beverage, showcasing over 400 varieties of products, the best of bites, eats, treats, and more. And the best beats on the Bandshell stage, including headliners Cypress Hill, Josh Ross, Taking Back Sunday, all rocking the Bandshell stage. Don't judge, just enjoy. TFOB, July 26th to 28th. Tickets available at beerfestival.ca.
Welcome back to Between Two Fermenters. Again, get your butt over to a computer or use your phone and purchase some tickets to Toronto's Festival of Beer. Always a great time, and make sure once you do, you bookmark the Great Lakes booth, because we would be happy to see you there in July. We're coming back with Zora Freeman McIntyre. He's the owner, a co-owner and operator of the Island Cafe. Welcome to the show, Zora.
Thanks, Troy. Great to be here.
Well, we got a lot to digest today, a lot to go over. But first, I'm just going to give a quick bio of who you are and what you do. I mentioned you're the co-owner and operator of the Island Cafe, one that you took over in 2010. You went straight to work on remaking it into what we know it to be today. You're an avid tennis player, I'm told, canoe tripper and Northern Ontario lover, and grew up on the Toronto Island. So I want to touch on that later, because you will be the first person that I talk to, or that I know, that has lived on the Toronto Islands. Zora lives on the island May to October, and in the west end of Toronto November to April. He loves to cook, eat, and drink, which is good for someone that owns a cafe. And his favorite JLB beer is Sunnyside, which I'm drinking today, so that's great. Okay, are you ready to get into this, Zora?
Absolutely.
All right. So the first big, real loaded question I have for you is, how are you doing after the fire that destroyed the Island Cafe?
You know, Troy, there's been ups and downs for sure. Emotionally, when my mom called me early on Sunday morning, my kids were actually staying on the islands with my parents, who lived full year on the island overnight. And she said, the kids are okay, but the WIA has burnt down. And, it was just shocking news to me, like this, it's a business I've been running for 15 years. And, I should say too, that my parents ran the Island Cafe from 1983 to 1993. So when I was, a little kid, until I was about 5 or 6. So, we have a long history with the building and with the cafe. So I'm feeling the shock is kind of worn off, and now I'm into the feelings of it's, like mourning,
It's essentially watching, your second home, essentially.
Totally.
From childhood all the way to present, gone in a flash. So we'll talk a little bit more about the fire and the impact it's going to have on the business moving forward. And I think a lot of people that follow the Island Cafe, that love the Island Cafe, want to hear some plans for the summer months to see what's percolating. But first, let's kind of go back in the history of Island Cafe. So you just kind of started that. Your parents originally operated it back in the 80s?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So my parents, with our original Island Cafe logo, you can see in my sweater here, with the ferry boat and the neon lettering. My mom and dad started that in 1983, and operated from the same location on Wards Island in the WIA clubhouse. And back then it was very similar vibe, like the same logo, the same aesthetic, but it was just takeaway, and there was no liquor license at that time. So it's just, you walked up, you got your ice cream, you could order some food, and someone would call your name out and you'd get your food and you could be on your way, or you could sit at some of the tables in the gardens there. And then both my parents, had different careers and did different things. I grew up, and then there was an opportunity to take over the lease again, and we started again in 2010.
Very good. And what was it before your parents had it? Was it a cafe before your parents ran it?
Yeah, so the building itself was built in 1937, and it's called the Wards Island Association Clubhouse, and it's a building that gets used. The inside of the building gets used for dances, and there's a theater group that will build their sets and do all their work in there, and then they do actually outdoor theater on the island, but they use it as their home base for that. And other community groups will use it sort of like a community center in a way. So we're attached. The Island Cafe is attached to that building, and for close to 100 years, there's been different things happening in that building, but there's almost always been a like a snack bar or some sort of place to many years ago, before my parents took it over. It was just like a sort of window that you could come up to and order like a coffee or a really bag of chips, like a pop. Like there weren't really many options. Chocolate bar. And then, when my parents took it over in the 80s, that's when it sort of started anew in terms of offering full meals and home cooked stuff.
And were they in the back of house cooking the food, serving like the coffee and stuff? Yeah, they were like a real family business.
My mom's always been a cook, and she did everything in the 80s, but for sure the back of house cooking was where she was most happy. And in this current iteration of the cafe, my mom has done a lot of baking, and in recent years really has been working mostly in the garden. We have large gardens all around the Island Cafe. Most of the gardens are on city land, and we have a partnership with the city of Toronto that's part of the Grow TO program that the city of Toronto started, which is basically promoting growing food in the city. So we have extensive garden beds on the property, and then we donate a certain amount of that food to food banks in the city, and to
I was going to say, you're doing a lot of kale and chard and some greens there, right? That you're donating to different food banks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, primarily chard and kale. We like growing them because we can harvest off of the plants all year, like the whole growing season. So from basically beginning of June until the end of October, we're harvesting off those plants and sending food to Parkdale Food Bank and the Fort York Food Bank in the city.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, we'll touch a little bit on that and coming up later in the episode, because they do have some questions about your food and you're ultra local and all that. But for those who haven't visited in the past, so you mentioned 2010 you took it over. I think it was 2012 around then you got a liquor license. But can you describe the Island Cafe and its glory? So paint a picture in the listeners' minds of what what they would see coming off the ferry.
Sure. So you get off the Wards Island ferry, and about 20 meters south of there, you can already see the big sign on top of our awning on the patio, welcoming you. Big old willow trees and a couple poplars sort of dotted around the property, and then a couple of apple trees close to the building. It's a big old wooden building. You walk up a long ramp with a veranda behind you. You order at the counter, or you can go to a host station and be seated by a host on our patio. The patios are all bordered with garden beds growing either food or flowers. So it's very lush and colorful. All our colors are sort of blues and neon greens and pinks. So it's like vibrant, colorful, and you just hear the sound of like tons of different people all having, a fun day on the island, eating ice cream, sitting, drinking a beer, cocktails, fish and chips, burgers, fun summer food and drink.
And one thing that's really unique about the Island Cafe that I like, it's hard to put into words how much I love the Island Cafe. It's special place to me. There's nothing really like it in all of Toronto. Well, there isn't. But one of the really interesting things is there's no indoor seating whatsoever.
That's right. Yeah.
So everything, the patio, and then you want to pull up a bar stool, you're actually sitting, at a bar with just like a little cover over your head. But maybe talk a little bit about that. Like what was the decision to make everything outdoor?
Well, part of it is the building itself. Like the interior of the building, as I said, is used as a community center for various functions. So we really have the north veranda, which faces the city, that runs the length of the whole building. And then we have a kitchen area that's inside the building. And then our kitchen like opens up to the veranda and the deck out front. So our kitchen actually, like, when there's bad weather, and a storm rolls through, like, we actually have a security screen that wraps around the veranda. And, it's a thing that, like, whoever's a manager on duty has to, like, call it early enough that you can pull the whole security fan across before the wind and the rain really hits you, or else, like, literally, like, glassware can just fly off shelves and start smashing, and like, wind can blow into the kitchen, turn off all the pilots of all the equipment, and it's just, it can, the weather, like, will come into the restaurant, and patrons, like, it can be a beautiful sunny day, and then all of a sudden everyone's running for cover. They're running behind the bar, they're running, where it's not uncommon for us to have to shoo someone out of the bar.
Well, I fun story. I was there one day. The rain clouds started to come over. It was a beautiful afternoon. Started to rain. I got up and ran in behind the bar, and someone said, "Oh, do you work here?" I was wearing all my GLB gear, and I said, "Oh, I better get around behind the bar. I've been drinking." So, but it was, I just wanted to keep dry, and the team there was just like, "I'll just come back here for a little bit." But, so let's talk about the beer and the bar area. So 2012. So you took over in 2010. 2012, you got a liquor license to actually run a bar. How was the reception when you became a licensed establishment? Was there any pushback from the community? There's only a handful of restaurants, I would say, then, or places on the island selling beer. Sit down to have a pint. Yeah. Was there any pushback from the community?
There was a little bit. The vast majority of the island community was really supportive of the license, but there were a handful of people that were not. So, we did have to go through that process, but we were ultimately given the license. And since then, it's been, I think, a very positive thing for the community, because, we get to showcase all these local breweries, local vineyards, and like, we just haven't had any issues. We have live music all summer. So, imbibing in live music, it's hard to have a music venue without having a beer or a glass of wine available. It's, it's just civilized. And so we haven't had any issues, and it's been, a very positive thing, I would say. And
so you run May to October, essentially.
That's right. Yeah.
And how would you say, like, is it tourist heavy, or Toronto mainlanders heavy, or is it locals heavy? Like, who makes up the biggest population of your consumer base?
I mean, the biggest population is, I would say, like, local Torontonians who come over for a day on Ward's Island. And then, but it's a real mix. Like, it's tourists from all over the world. It's Torontonians, it's Islanders. And, even, like, there's the boating community too. Like, there's we get sailors that come from across the lake, like Port Dalhousie, or the American side, also the Canadian side, that they come and they sail over and they park their boat at. There's various places, like there's the marina on the island. There's a couple yacht clubs. There's public mooring spots, Hanlon. So we have actually, like, so many regulars that, like, they sail over, like, a couple times a year, and then they come and they'll be there for the weekend, and they'll come for every single meal at the cafe. And,
so they become regulars, like, right? They become regulars.
Yeah.
That environment that you've created and your team's created continues to draw them back to your establishment. It feels like a home away from home again. And that's what bars and cafes are meant to do. They're meant to be that community hub. And so it's great that you've done that. I can picture sitting at the bar and talking to people coming in from America that had boated over, or I don't know if that's the actual term, boated over, but came and, it was a place where, hey, what do you do? Oh, this is what I do. I work for Brewery. And what do you do? Oh, I just came here on my boat. And we had this conversation, and that's what these places are for. So maybe walk us through, like, what do you see and what do your teams see when an Islander or Torontonian hook up with, when I say hook up, I mean just have conversations with someone coming to visit for the first or second time?
Oh, I totally agree with you, Troy. Like I think to me that's what a restaurant or a cafe or a bar that's what it is. It's it's a place for you to gather with your own friends and celebrate occasions or come together for whatever social occasion. But it's also a place where you meet others and you ideas mix and connections are made. And yeah, I mean I think we're situated in a perfect place to do that because we're in this beautiful park and this large metropolitan city is across the water, like looking at us, and people are coming on the ferry, and they're finding connection at this little spot because I think everyone can connect with sitting outside and enjoying good food and drink and conversation. It's something that everyone can enjoy. So yeah, I think we're ideally suited to that, and I think that's why it's been a successful business, and it holds a special place for a lot of people because it does sit in this, as you were saying, a unique sort of situation where it is sort of holding space for people from this large metropolitan city in this little outdoor park,
which is really one of a kind, and well, it is one of a kind in Toronto. So I know you sell a lot of Toronto Island Cafe Lager or Island Cafe Lager, which we do for you guys. What made you lean towards supporting local craft beer?
So, I mean, as long as I've enjoyed beer, I've enjoyed Ontario craft beer, and GLB, I hold in high esteem, and have for a very long time. And years ago, a beer salesman from GLB, Barry, came to the island, and I was working in the early spring, April, and I wasn't selling GLB at that time. And he brought by samples, like no, just showed up on his bike and brought the samples.
What kind of rep goes over to the island in April to
yeah, he was there. He was like, he probably thought to himself, oh, they're going to be having to set up. And he came and he said, you're on the Great Lakes. We're GreatLakesBeer. And, that was the beginning. And, from the beginning, we sold, the lager and Sunnyside and Canuck. And, the last couple of years, we started selling Octopus Wants to Fight as well. And, we myself and lots of people on the team are huge fans, and we have regulars on the island who are only drink Canuck or only drink
I bet you're talking about Jeff Kern's Timber, the circus.
Jeff Kern's and there's a gentleman, Sam Sperry, that are paying the GLB bills in terms of Canuck.
Well, shout out to those two lads. We've actually worked with Jeff in the past on our brewpub grand opening, and we had him come out and do his whole lumberjack and juggling chainsaws and stuff while he drinks a Canuck, and we had to make sure he had the insurance for that. But so other than Great Lakes, you do sell some other brands, and you mentioned some Ontario wines. So what was the impetus other than being a craft fan yourself? Was it just like you're like, people are coming here, this is a unique place, tie the beer into the location? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no, you're totally nailing it. Like it's something that I enjoy consuming, but also we're like we're hosts in the park. We're hosts to people in Toronto, and you want to showcase what you can get here. And Ontario has an amazing amount of incredible produce, meat, dairy products, beer, wine. Like we have it all. And so as much as possible, I want to promote that and enjoy that and show people who are visiting. Like when people are coming from the States or all over the world, and they get to try a product that's made right there. They're really experiencing, the place. So the terroir.
And there's nothing better than being a representative of the brewery and going to the Island Cafe, sitting down and seeing someone order your beer that's not from here, and then that sparks that conversation, and it's a great feeling.
Sure.
So you mentioned a little bit about the food and the produce. We talked about the garden you have, and I want to get in on that in a second, but I know when I go and order a kale salad, which is amazing at the cafe, it's your own kale. Like that is, you guys are harvesting it and you're putting it on the menu. I think your tomatoes or like some of the produce that you guys are actually growing and it's used. And talk about the food program then and where you're getting the food and why doing your own produce is so important to the cafe.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that we feel really grateful to be able to do. Through this partnership with the City of Toronto, we have these extensive garden beds, and we tend to them and donate a certain amount, and then we use a certain amount in the restaurant itself. So we're able to grow all of our own kale to have a kale salad on the menu all year for the whole growing season. So the kale salad's on there from June till the end of October, and aside from one or two little blips where we have like maybe bad weather and the plants are slowing down production, or we have a crazy tear of good weather and we're just selling kale salads bonanza, we will sometimes have to buy one or two crates of kale.
Oh, I think that's acceptable. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's quite amazing that, and what we've really find amazing too is how little land we need to do that. Like we have some sizable beds, but like when you do the math and you're like, okay, we did this many kale salads this season and we gave out this many bunches of kale to these food banks, like the numbers are kind of staggering in terms of what is produced in the amount of space. But yeah, our food program, so we're able to grow all our kale for our kale salads. We do a caprese salad that runs, basically once the tomatoes are ready. Yeah. So like around beginning of August, mid-August, and that will run till the end of October. And that, again, the caprese salad we only made with tomatoes from the garden, basil grown from the garden. And then it's actually garnished with nasturtiums, which is a flower that we line all of our garden beds with nasturtiums, and they help with some pest control, but the flowers are edible and the leaves are edible, and they have like a real black pepper sort of flavor. That's, black pepper you can put on anything. Nasturtiums, therefore, you can put on anything. So that goes on the caprese plate and on the kale salad plate. And then we're growing parsley and a handful of other herbs that are also used on a regular basis. So it's great. It feels really good to like do the whole process, like both from the employee and chef side of things, where you plant the plant.
I was going to ask, who does that? You mentioned your mom and the gardening, but does your team like chef and in the back of house, totally. Or everyone gets involved in this?
Yeah, I mean, my mom and a small group of employees will do the planting in the spring, and then throughout the summer, my mom and, again, the same sort of a couple of the employees, like it's usually been one of the bakers, or be like 2 or 3 employees will do like a half day or a day a week in the garden, and that'll be like for the garden maintenance. But then all the harvesting for the restaurant is done by the kitchen staff. So usually it can be a dishwasher, a prep person, or a chef that will go out. They'll pick the kale, like big bins of kale, and then we have an outdoor sink that we wash all the kale in, and then we dry all the kale there, break it into appropriate size pieces, always by hand, because when you chop leafy greens with a knife, it starts to oxidize the cut areas and they can brown faster. And so we do that process, and then the kale gets brought into the walk-in fridge or right onto the line. And, so that's usually happening every day during the summer. So the greens are, fresh, and, you just can't beat that sort of freshness. It's
Well,
amazing.
for a beer podcast, I'm learning a lot about kale today, which is
Yeah.
which is great. So what last question before we get into kind of like the next steps on with the Island Cafe
Sure.
and the fire, but what made you decide to donate produce to food banks? How did that come
Mostly
about?
because it was just like when we first started doing the gardens, we had all this space and we thought of this idea to work with the city of Toronto. And like the initial idea my mom had was to take 1/100th of an acre of land and see how much kale we could produce in one growing season. So that was like the year one model. And we donated 100% of that one garden bed to a food bank. And, we grew I should have got the number ready for you before this, but it's somewhere in
lots.
the range of like 800 pounds of kale or
Oh wow.
something. It's like a hilarious amount for this tiny little piece of land. And, from there, we worked with the parks department and added more garden beds. And, the vision was really like customers could come and eat the kale and like you're really experiencing that farm to table experience, but also that a certain amount would be growing to food insecurity in the city with a sort of like pointing to the idea that we could be growing more food in our cities to feed ourselves.
Yes. Well, that's admirable, Zora, and that's great that you guys. I expect you guys are going to be doing it again this summer.
Yeah, I mean, one silver lining to this terrible fire that's taking place is the gardens are completely fine. Like the
Good.
wind was blowing a certain direction, and actually our original sign and the awning over the patio is still stand. That's
Oh,
the
really?
only thing that's
Yeah.
left. But it's kind of nice to know that our original sign that's actually was built in the 80s by my dad and an artist on the island, Barbara Clunder, designed it. Um, we've painted it and sanded it up every couple of years since then. It's still good. So
Oh,
yeah,
well,
there you go.
that's excellent. So, yes, a little silver lining in that. So let's get to the hard stuff here. We talked about the fire, everything except the awning, in the gardens, it survived. Where are things at right now with, I don't know if it's an investigation, but where are things at with respect to the fire?
So yeah, the fire marshal, the fire department, after they put out the fire, they came and investigated, and that investigation is ongoing. Like they're done on the actual site, and now the site is still very much an eyesore. Like it's kind of hard to walk by for me, at least.
Yeah.
It's like just a pile of charred remains of the business, and there's not much left, which is like kind of stark. But anyways, they'll probably release their report in the next couple of months.
Okay.
It takes quite a long time. And so at this point, we have no idea how the fire started.
So while you wait on the report, can you do stuff on site? Like, can you start to clean, or do you have to wait until the report is finalized?
Not really. Like the cleanup will be done by, like, it's complicated because we leased the space from the Wards Island Association, and then the building itself is owned by the province through a land trust. So there's sort of three layers of.
You have some red tape to go through, eh?
Yeah, we're at the bottom of that. So there'll be a big community process, I imagine, and some consulting to decide, how and when the building will be rebuilt. And, and that's probably another silver lining that, it was a very old building. It was built in the 30s as summer only sort of center for summer fun. And now things have changed. And so it's an opportunity for the community to kind of maybe reimagine what could be there in terms of, facilities. I think there'll still be, I think there's a good possibility, there'll be a cafe or a restaurant that'll be part of it. And, hopefully we'll be able to, start anew from that structure. But for the foreseeable, for this year, at least, and might be as many as 2 or 3 years before it gets rebuilt, we're considering other locations on the island to do a temporary pop-up island cafe. And we're working with the city of Toronto currently to determine the viability of a site. And so it might be possible that we could be open soon. I don't know really what soon means. It could be a month, it could be longer. But at this point, we don't really actually know yet. We're still in the preliminary talks.
Well, as you and I we've communicated through via text, like Great Lakes is here to help out in any respect to a pop up, to provide some equipment, whether it be like a fridge or whatever, to help get things up and running. Because it's your business and it's a loss for you, but it really is a big loss for the city, and without laying it on too thick, it's a big loss to Ontario, and to it was a destination place. And so hopefully we and you and the team, and I know you got a lot of outpouring of love and support from Islanders, so hopefully everyone can work together on the rebuild and get something up and running for the summer, because I know a lot of people would love that. So yeah, you have an online store up and running, and you're selling a lot of merchandise. And I know last week you had some like free delivery if you order on a certain time. So here's a chance to plug it. What do you got going on the online store, and what's next for the online store, just to keep the Island Cafe in people's minds?
Yeah, thanks, Troy. So yeah, we launched the online store. It's very exciting. That you can find it at islandcafeto.com, and we're selling a bunch of merchandise like this purple crew neck sweater that I'm wearing right now. There's
It's lovely,
hats.
by the way.
I have the bucket hat right here as well. And so there's some fun, colorful clothing. And we had plans to launch this online store before the fire, and the timing of it was sort of hilarious that the fire happened, just days before the online store was going to launch. So in some ways that's kind of worked out. People are buying lots of stuff, and it's a way for us to start, raising a bit of money and keeping the Island Cafe kind of going, staffing wise, but also, energy wise. It's really energizing for us to launch it and have this new kind of project to work on while we're considering our future. We do want to add more products. So right now, yeah, it's all just merchandise, sweaters, hats, shorts, and tote bags and mugs. But we are hoping to add some pickles, some sauces, an
Beer,
eggplant chutney that
maybe beer,
sorry,
maybe some Island Cafe lager,
maybe some lager.
Yeah, we're gonna have to take this offline. Yeah, because with your license, establishment standing or not, you might still have the ability to sell,
to do that,
do that. So that's something
very cool.
That's something we should talk about in depth more. Yeah. You mentioned the staff, and I'll just be really quick. We have something in common too. Not that you just sell our beer and the relationship we've had, but we've had some staff that have worked at our brew pub or worked at the Island Cafe since we opened, which is really cool, because someone might be I go over to the Island Cafe and I see Charlotte working, and then the next day she's at the brew pub working for us, which is really cool. So I just wanted to put that out there. So
totally.
We're going to go to an ad, and then when we come back, are you cool to stick around to do some rapid fire questions?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to an ad, and we'll come back with some 5 fun questions for Zora. Hang tight.
So you're here because you love beer, right? Nothing beats the right beer at the right time with the right group of people. And at GLB Etobicoke, we're all about making that experience happen day in and day out. Join us for our full slate of events on our cozy heated patio with Euchre Wednesdays, Trivia Thursdays, and live music Fridays, all hosted by our certified stellar taproom team in the heart of South Etobicoke. Join the community and tip back a frosty one while you're at it at 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard.
Okay, we're back with Zora. We're going to ask him some rapid fire questions. Zora, these ones I'm going to ask. You answer as quick as you can, and we'll go from there. Let me take one more sip of this sessionable IPA. And let's go. Best thing to do on the island?
Oh, That's a hard question, but I'm going to say a swim at Ward's Beach.
Okay. This wasn't on my rapid fire questions, but I do this every time. Best thing about growing up on the island?
Oh, yeah. I think the freedom, just like being able to go out of your house from a young age and just have such a big area to roam. It's like being a country kid. Like I could run over to a friend's house. Like when we were growing up, we would just go right into our friends' houses. Like there was not really any knock, maybe a sort of knock open, or just a straight open the door. And, like you go get your friend, get your bikes. You could bike anywhere on the island. Like until a certain age, we were not allowed to go in the water.
You went over to the nude
but,
beach, didn't you, as kids?
Oh, of course, of course, of course.
Nice.
That's a rite of passage for any island kid. You're like, we should go check it out, and then you check it out, and you're like, oh wow, I don't know if I wanted to do that.
Yeah, you're just going to see seagulls, and look what happened.
Yeah.
Charming, welcoming, local, relaxing. Those are all some of the words our staff have used to describe the Island Cafe. How would you describe it in one word?
Oh, one word. Well, I'm touched and honored by your staff's descriptions. One word, vibrant.
Nice. Good. Sunnyside Island Cafe Lager, Octopus Wants to Fight. What do you reach for first? I think I already know the answer, but... Sunnyside's maybe my favorite summer beer, and it's definitely up there in my top 5 beers to be consumed any time of the year. But yeah, for the summertime, the Sunnyside, it's light, but it has the big flavor of an IPA, and it's just perfect for me in island summer. And that's what I'm crushing today. This episode, which we'll hear later, is brought to you by Sunnyside Session IPA. What is the best part of owning a cafe on an island?
I think for me, it's really just being able to be outside so much. As I was talking about earlier, like even when you're in the kitchen and, you've got 6 burners going and your deep fryer's going flat top, like you still are looking out into, this lush park, and you're still getting breezes coming in, and, you really feel that connection to the wilderness when you're there. And being as a cook too, like being able to go out and put your hands in the dirt and pull the food out of the ground, like I feel very lucky to be able to do that. And I live on the island in the summer, so I get to walk to work. It's pretty great.
Yeah, that's it would be really awesome to live on the island in the summer. That would be a cool experience. So whenever you are, or if you ever need,
you can get a boat, Troy.
I was going to say, if you ever need a babysitter, maybe I'll come over.
Yeah.
What is the hardest part of owning a cafe on an island?
Oh, it's the logistics. So, if a staff member misses the 12 o'clock boat, let's say, the next boat's not till 12:45. In the peak summer, it's not so big a deal because the water taxis are running, constantly. Mm-hmm. But it can cause real headaches when things don't make the right boat. People weren't, on time with deliveries, and then boats are missed. All sorts of crazy logistical things about being on the island.
So when you get back up and running on your job application or your job posting, you're looking for a hardcore swimmer, a Penny Olsniak or something to come over and work. If they miss the ferry, they can swim across.
Yeah, no excuse.
Okay, that's it. Zora, thank you very much for this. It was a great time chatting with you. As I've mentioned numerous times, the whole team at GLB appreciates you making the time to talk about the past, the present, and the future of Island Cafe. That picture you painted just with the blues and the greens and the colors, the bright colors, the outdoors, on a dreary day while we record this, it just takes me right back to having a pint or 10 of Sunnyside or Island Cafe lager on the patio. But we learned a lot, and we learned a little bit about kale today. So thanks very much for joining us, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Troy. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Cole's Notes! It's time to hear from our man in the lab, Cole Raiskums, and another edition of his Cole's Notes. Cole is going to be telling us all about hops, going into detail on New World versus Old World. Take it away, Cole.
Awesome. Thanks, Troy. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Cole's Notes segment. Today, we're going to be learning about the difference between Old World and New World hops. So much like grape varieties, hops can also be classified by where they originated. However, there is a much more complexity to the hops than where they've been grown. Different flavor profiles and growing regions of these hops have influenced the types of beers that we use them in, creating a bit of a chicken or egg conundrum. Were the beers made to suit the hops, or were the hops grown to fit the beers? Let's begin with Old World hops. These hop varieties originate from Europe and have been used in beers brewed in England, Germany, and the Czech Republic for centuries. These hops encompass the noble hop varietals that are named after regions from which they're cultivated, such as Tettnanger, Saaz, and East Kent Goldings. Old World hops have more floral, earthy, and spice-forward aromas to them, while still having some light citrus characteristics. The growing regions for these hops are more conducive to having less hop oils and lower alpha acid content in them, leading to less bitterness. These characteristics make these hops like Saaz perfect for a Czech Pilsner, or EKG quintessential for an English Pale Ale. In contrast, New World hops originate from basically anywhere outside of Europe, but are primarily grown in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, New Zealand, and Australia. Many of these hops are not actually native to these regions, but are actually crossbreeds from Old World hops brought over by European settlers with the wild hops found in these regions. New World hops boast strong citrus and tropical aromas with a much higher hop oil and alpha acid content than their Old World counterparts. Hops like Citra, Cascade, and Mosaic have been the driving force for the big fruity flavors in the IPAs that we make today. So even though these hops originated from different places, it is still very possible to grow Cascade in Germany, for example, or Tettnanger in Washington. But the region they grow in has a profound effect on their flavor, making them taste completely different than their native variant. Unfortunately, with regional conditions being affected by climate change, it's becoming harder to grow and develop these hops that make beer truly exciting. It's important that we protect our planet so that we can continue to make beer and science taste so good.
There you go. There's so many fascinating facts about hops. Cole, I got 3 questions for you. Number 1, GLB beers using New World hops. Can you name a few?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we use a bunch of Citra in a lot of our more fruit-forward beers, West Coast and East Coast style. Specifically, Octo has quite a bit of Citra in it. Mosaic is another really big factor in a lot of those beers as well. So it's truly a lot of these really great flavors that you're finding in our popular beers can be attributed to these New World hops.
Okay, and then Old World. Any GLB beers using Old World hops?
Yeah, Saaz is another great example. We use that in our brew shop, and it really gives it that front-end bitterness that you'd expect from a Pilsner or Pils-style beer.
Okay, and then last one. Do you have a favorite, New World or Old World?
They each have their place. I love them both especially, but I have to say New World kind of wins out for me.
Oh, nice. I thought you were going to do that. Oh, I can't name a favorite child thing, but that's good to hear. Okay.
I have a clear favorite, but it's close.
There we go. All right, thanks, Cole, for another great edition of Cole's Notes.
Thank you so much, Troy.
Cheers.
Emmett works hard on our canning line. He spends his day making sure all our delicious GLB beer is perfectly packaged and fresh as possible when it arrives in your hand. When his shift is done, Emmett ends his day in the GLB taproom, enjoying his all-time favorite beer, Great Lakes Stout. And why wouldn't he? Great Lakes Stout is dark, smooth, dry, and sessionable. Notes of chocolate and coffee are delivered through a light body and creamy finish that feels like winning a rubber ducky race at the end of a hard day's work.
I love it.
Great Lakes Stout, available at the Brewery, GLB Brew Pub, and online shop. Be like Emmett. Love your stout. Around the industry.
So, gonna start off with some funny around the industry beer news, and it comes out of Muskoka, Ontario. I have a cottage up in Dorset, or I don't have a cottage. It's a family cottage, but I know the area very well. So this story intrigued me. From the Muskoka, or My Muskoka Now, it's an online newspaper. A 38-year-old man from Huntsville has been charged after stealing multiple beer kegs from an area brewery. The dope then decided he would try to take them back to said establishment to get a refund. The business contacted the police, and they had some suspicions that this guy was involved in stealing kegs in the past. And guess what? The accused was been charged with 3 counts of theft under $5,000, 2 counts of breaking and entering, and 2 counts of trafficking stolen goods under $5,000, and for destroying or damaging property. Now, I got to tell you, this happens more than you would know. It happens all across the province. Bars and restaurants, if they put their kegs outside, people come by, take the kegs, and they try to take them back to the brewer's retail or the beer store. Or if it has if it's branded, they try to actually take them back to the breweries. 9 times out of 10, this actually doesn't work, and there's nothing they can do, and the keg ends up just, going back into the ether. So, to the guy out there in Huntsville who stole some kegs, sorry about your luck. But that's the fun part of Around the Industry news this week. On a serious side, we heard from the Premier this week that Ontario is not raising the drinking age. Dr. Kieran Moore, who is the Chief Medical Health Officer for the province, has just issued a report advising the government to take a look at raising the drinking age and about doing more reporting and analyzing, putting beer into corner stores and convenience stores and all that stuff. And so the Premier has said that's not going to happen. They believe they're good with where it's at now, and corner stores will become a thing going into next year. Over in Hamilton, a sad news that Mosaic, a very popular, well-known craft beer bar, is closing down. And then moving out to Stouffville, good news, Muddy York just opened their retail store. So we talked about Muddy York moving from Toronto to Stouffville just a couple episodes ago. So congratulations to them on opening their new retail store out that way. Over to GLB news. We had a beer dinner back at the end of March. It was just amazing. It was fantastic. The beer was amazing. The food was amazing. The company was great. We shared stories about our history and some things that are coming soon. And we heard from the attendees that, they liked it so much they plan to keep coming back, which is great. But you should also come too. It's on April 25th down at the GLB Brew Pub. It's only $50, 4 beers, 4 plates, 4 different food pairings. It's a great time. Shining Through Lager, premium lager. We just released that beer. Shining Through is made with love and support for the Shining Through Center for Children with Autism. This is our 4th year working with the center. $1 from each can of that product sold goes back to Shining Through to assist in their programming for children and youth with autism. Sunnyside, which I'm drinking right now. I'm on my second one of the episode. Sunnyside, 3.9%. Poundable, crushable, low on the alcohol, big on the taste. It's now out across Ontario. It's a new can, new look, new format. I hope and I think everyone out there will love it. And lastly, Around the Industry from a GLB perspective, expanded home delivery. Yes, we posted this on April 1st. A lot of people thought it was an April Fool's joke. It is not. We have launched expanded home delivery to cities like Guelph, the Tri-Cities, so Cambridge, Waterloo, Kitchener-Waterloo, Pickering, Whitby, Oshawa. So go over to GreatLakesBeerShop.ca, type in your postal code there and see if you are situated in one of those cities that we can get beer to you now. $50 minimum home delivery, and see one of our smiling customer service retail people. They would love to take some fresh GLB to you. That's it for Around the Industry this week. That's it. That's all, folks. Episode 5 has moved from the mash tun to the fermenters, or into the garden with the kale. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation with Zora and hope that you'll be able to experience the Ellen Cafe one day soon. As fingers crossed, as Zora said, it could be a month for a pop-up or it could be a couple of years. So we'll keep you posted. In the meantime, please head over to their website and shop for their gear. Every little bit helps at this time. Today's episode was fueled by cans of our Sunnyside Session IPA. Low on the alcohol, big on the taste, which you can now find all over Ontario wherever great beer is sold. You can visit the brewery at 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard in Etobicoke, or grab some delicious eats and fresh pours at our brew pub at 11 Lower Jarvis Street here in the glorious town of Toronto. We hope you'll join us next time, as we'll be dropping a special episode next week. Holy Mackinac! It'll be a good one. If you have any content you'd love to hear us discuss on the show, or just want to tell us what you're drinking, drop us a line at podcast@GreatLakesBeer.com. Until next time, please remember to keep tipping your glass of fresh GLB in the right direction. Supporting local never tasted so good.
To learn more about what's happening at Great Lakes Brewery, visit GreatLakesBeer.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter, or follow Great Lakes Beer on your favorite social media platforms.